Hello, and welcome to the Intel Brief. Today is Thursday, 3 July. I'm your host Daniel, and today we're going to be talking about Azerbaijan has demanded punishment for the death of brothers in Russian police custody. Ursula von der Leyen's European Commission is facing a no-confidence vote. And Iran has ordered the suspension of cooperation with the UN nuclear agency. So firstly, Azerbaijan demanded on Wednesday that Russia punish those responsible for the deaths of two Azerbaijani men in police custody, refusing to back down in a growing diplomatic dispute. The South Caucasus country summoned the Russian ambassador to Baku to protest over the illegal actions of Russian police and accused Moscow of undermining bilateral relations. Russia said certain forces, which it did not specify, were trying to wreck the relationship between the two neighbors and urged Baku to repair it. The diplomatic spat highlights the growing assertiveness towards Moscow on the part of Azerbaijan, an oil-producing former Soviet republic that has cultivated close ties with Turkey and has been boosted by military victories over longtime rival Armenia since 2020. The dispute began when two ethnic Azerbaijani brothers died after being arrested last week during police raids as part of a murder investigation in the Russian city of Yekaterinburg. Russian authorities said one of the men died by heart failure and have not said how the other died. Azerbaijan says the pair were tortured and beaten to death. So what? This is a pretty interesting breakdown of relations, as Russia was kind of the middleman between Armenia and Azerbaijan when that conflict was going on back in 2020, and has now really fallen by the wayside and lost a lot of their influence. It's likely that Turkey has tried to come in and provide Azerbaijan with some confidence that Russia can't do anything, such as what they've done over the border in Georgia, where they've invaded and disrupted the country pretty significantly. So that's possibly what has given Azerbaijan this confidence to kind of challenge Russia's regional authority. Additionally, if we kind of look back to Christmas, when Russia shot down a passenger airline, which they claim they didn't do, but appears almost certain that they did, it's likely that this has also soured the relationship. And next, the European Commission under President Ursula von der Leyen will face a European Parliament no-confidence vote next week. The parliamentary president, Robert Metsola, informed the parliamentary group leaders of the development Wednesday evening. European leaders will debate the motion on Monday, with a vote scheduled for 3 days later. Although the vote is largely symbolic, as most parties oppose the motion, it underscores the growing frustration in Brussels following a series of contentious decisions. If the motion were to pass, the Commission would be required to resign as a whole, including its president and all 26 EU commissioners. So what? It's kind of, I hadn't really heard anything about this, though. I mean, I'm not deeply involved in European EU level politics, but yeah, this kind of, to me, feels like it's a bit more of the growing discontent with like current leadership in most places, such as like what we've seen in Germany, where they've started to go a bit more right, and you've seen that rise of the AfD. And most EU countries are starting to lean a bit more right, as discontent with the status quo is kind of forming. So it seems likely that this is just a flow-on effect of that, and that most countries are just not happy with the way the EU is presiding over everybody. And lastly, Iran's president on Wednesday signed legislation to suspend access for IAEA inspectors into the country until the security of its nuclear facilities is guaranteed. The move could further limit inspectors' ability to monitor Iran's nuclear program that had been enriching uranium to near weapons-grade levels. The suspension has come after US and Israeli airstrikes targeted the facilities on June 22nd. According to Iran state television, the suspension will remain in effect until certain conditions are met, including the guaranteed security of nuclear facilities and scientists. Further details on the decisions are limited, and it is not clear how Iran will implement it. The IAEA has already been refused access to the damaged nuclear facilities that Israel and the US bombed last month. On Sunday, Iran's ambassador to the United Nations said that the IAEA inspectors' work had been suspended but denied any threats against them. So what? This is unsurprising, right? There's no way they were going to let those inspectors back in after the US and Israeli strikes on the facilities. While it's possible that they were complicit and some of them are, agents for Israel or the US, this is just pretty standard. Like, Iran is going to cocoon itself up and try and do what it can to protect its nuclear facilities. This was one of the risks that was kind of highlighted around the time when Israel and the US were conducting their strikes, that if the destruction wasn't effective and there is still functioning like nuclear equipment and scientists to use it, they could take this even further underground, like completely removing access from the IAEA and continuing to develop the uranium in secret, possibly just popping out with a nuclear weapon in 6 to 12 months, depending on their level of capability at this point. Though it is highly likely that Israel has intelligence assets and positions to identify if this is happening, Iran will be highly skeptical right now, and the IRGC will definitely be working overtime in counterintelligence efforts. So yeah, pretty interesting times, and we'll definitely find out what's going to happen at some point. Thank you for listening to the Intel Brief. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you next time. See you.